I started thinking about when it all began. The wine had barely touched my lips when he stood. Her father, Gerald, always in a blazer, even at his own kitchen table. He tapped the side of his glass with a fork like he was announcing a toast at a wedding. I flinched at the sound. "Matthew," he said, "let's not drag this out." He pulled out a manila folder, flipped it open with surgical precision, and slid the divorce papers across the table toward me. Everyone, her mother, her sister, even Anna, just watched. No one stopped him. I looked at Anna. She didn't meet my eyes. Her hands were folded in her lap, her lips pressed into a line. "This isn't the place," I said. Her mother scoffed. "Where else?" "Your family." I almost laughed. Almost. 5 years of showing up, of calling them sir and ma'am, of fixing their porch steps, helping them move furniture, taking care of Anna through every depressive spiral, every lost job, every fight. I was never family. I was a placeholder. I pushed back my chair. "I'm not signing anything." "You don't have to," said Gerald. "Anna will file. We just wanted you to hear it from us. Out of respect." Respect. Anna finally looked at me then. Her eyes were flat. "It's over, Matt." She didn't even use my full name. Her sister raised a glass. "To new beginnings." I walked out, through their pristine hallway lined with family photos I was never in, past the oak tree I once helped plant, into the night that swallowed me whole. I didn't remember driving home, just the way the folder sat on the passenger seat like a live animal. I stared at it until my headlights died. Then I sat in the dark and tried to understand what had just happened. And then I remembered something, a memory, sharp and sudden, like glass in the foot. 3 years ago, Anna had been starting a business. Her parents wouldn't co-sign the mortgage, so I did. And when we bought the house together, she'd signed over the deed to me. "For security," she said. That paper. That stupid, simple piece of paper. It was in the fireproof box in my closet. I hadn't thought about it in years. I went inside, pulled the box down, hands shaking, and there it was. Her signature. My name. Sole owner. I stood in the hallway, holding it, and for the first time in weeks, no, years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel vindictive. Not yet. But I felt something shift, a door cracking open, a breath held too long, released. I whispered to the empty house, "Okay." Not with anger, with clarity. That was the night I decided I wouldn't be erased. ChatGPT skazal. The house felt different the next morning. Still, expectant, as if it too was waiting to see what I'd do. I walked room to room in silence, fingers brushing walls I once painted with Anna. Traces of her still lingered, a scarf over a chair, her handwriting on a sticky note, the faint vanilla of her perfume on the hallway rug. But it wasn't her I was thinking about. It was them. The way her father smirked, how her sister sipped wine like it was a show. I replayed it over and over, trying to find the crack in time where I could have stopped it. I opened the fridge. Still full. Leftover lasagna, wine bottles, her kombucha. I should have thrown it all out. Instead, I sat at the table, in her chair, and drank her tea, just to see if it tasted like betrayal. It didn't. It tasted like ginger. I picked up my phone. No missed calls, no messages. I scrolled through old texts with Anna. At first, they were full of warmth, inside jokes, random photos, late-night confessions. Then came the shift. Her replies got shorter, colder, one-word answers, delays, silence. I hadn't wanted to see it, but it had started long before last night. Around noon, I drove past Gerald's office, sat in my car across the street, engine idling. He came out once, talking to a man in a navy suit, laughing, confident, clean. I hated how ordinary he looked. I thought about going in, saying something, demanding something. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove home and did the strangest thing. I stood in the living room, opened the deed again, and read it out loud, slowly, like a vow. My name is Matthew Charles Rayner, and I am the sole legal owner of this house located at... I stopped, stared at the line, then read it again. And again. Because it wasn't just legal, it was mine, not by marriage, not by grace, mine. In the silence that followed, I heard something shift, not outside, in me. I walked into the guest room, the one her family never stayed in because the light was wrong, and stood in the middle. I could see it already, the canvases, the paint, the shelves of books, the kind of space I'd wanted as a boy, a studio, a sanctuary. What if it wasn't just for me? The thought came uninvited, but once it arrived, it wouldn't leave. What if this house, this insult-turned inheritance, could become a refuge, not revenge, reinvention? People like me, people left behind, people erased. The idea made my chest hurt, in a good way. I went out back and stood under the bare maple tree, closed my eyes. She'd come back eventually, or her parents would, to collect, to threaten, to claim. Let them. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of losing something. I was curious what I might build. The letter arrived 3 days later. Cream envelope, stiff paper, her handwriting. Not a message, a demand. Anna wanted the keys returned, said she'd be sending movers next week. Please vacate the property peacefully to avoid legal complications. No dear Matthew. No mention of the deed. I read it twice, then a third time. I didn't get angry. I got precise. I took a photo of the deed, highlighted her signature, attached it to a brief message. This house is legally mine. Document enclosed. Please inform your family that any attempt to enter without permission will be considered trespassing. I hit send. Felt like breathing underwater. Cold, sharp, clean. She didn't respond, but the silence spoke loud enough. That evening, I walked the perimeter of the property, notebook in hand. Measured dimensions. Noted the cracks in the porch, the rust on the shed door, the way the light fell in the late afternoon. Then I made a list. Supplies, contacts, phases. If this was going to be something real, a space for creation, for resurrection, it needed bones. I remembered Isaac. We met in college, years ago. Him a sculptor, me a half-formed poet with too many metaphors. He'd gone on to curate exhibitions, work with youth programs, travel. We'd drifted. But he once told me, if you ever build a place that needs voices, call me. I collect them. So I did. He picked up on the third ring. Matt? Yeah, I think I'm building something. Pause. Tell me everything. We talked 2 hours. By the end, he was in. Next morning, I changed the locks. Quiet ceremony. No drama. Just metal and resolve. Later, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Her father. He didn't get out right away. Just sat, watching the house like it had cheated on him. When he finally stepped out, he wore the same blazer, as if his clothes could still command me. I met him at the door. This is trespassing, I said calmly. You're confused, son. I'm not your son. He smirked. This house belongs to my daughter. I held up the deed, laminated now, showed him the highlighted line. He squinted. Then, and this stunned me, he laughed. A technicality. A signature, I said, legally binding. Be careful, Matthew. Some gifts come with strings. I looked him in the eye. Then I'll make a tapestry out of them. He didn't respond, just turned and left. Inside, I stood still. The house was silent again, but not empty. I opened the guest room, dragged in the old table from the garage, set up paints I hadn't touched in years. And then I began, Not for revenge, for record. I painted the dinner. Gerald's smirk, Anna's silence, the glint of the wine glass mid-toast. I painted it all. Not perfect, not elegant, but real. Each stroke made something solid. I wasn't erasing what happened. I was preserving it. The notice was taped to my door the next morning, printed on firm legal paper with a polite but unmistakable threat. If you do not vacate the premises within 10 business days, further action will be pursued. Signed not by Anna, by a law firm, paid for by Gerald. I stood there in the doorway, barefoot, the morning sun burning my neck. My coffee had gone cold. I folded the letter neatly, placed it on the kitchen counter, and stared at it like it might blink first. 10 days. Not once had she called, not even to ask why. It was easier to let her father fight her battles, cleaner, just like the dinner. By noon, I was pacing. I pulled out every document I had, mortgage papers, deed, texts, emails, even the original transfer agreement she'd signed with a stupid heart next to her name. I stacked them in a binder, labeled it Truth, and put it by the door. Then I called a lawyer. She answered with a dry voice and sharper intelligence. "You have a strong case," she said after reviewing my documents. "But they're not going to play fair. You ready for that?" "I lived in that house for 5 years," I said. "I buried my whole self in it." "Then dig it out." That night, I painted again. This time, not a memory. A storm. Thick brush strokes, heavy gray, something that felt like drowning and wind, and the moment before something breaks. But something was off. Too raw. Too self-pitying. I scraped the canvas with a palette knife, watching the layers tear away like skin. For the first time since this began, I felt lost inside my own work. I curled up on the floor, back against the cold wall, fingers aching. What was I doing? I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't brave. I was a man who once apologized for sneezing too loud during a movie. They were going to crush me, quietly, with paper and power. A knock shattered the stillness. Isaac. He stood in the doorway with a toolbox, a bag of groceries, and a look that didn't need explanation. "I'm not here to ask," he said. "I'm here to build." Together we fixed the sink, rewired a faulty outlet, and cleared out the garage. At some point, music played. Something low and blue. He didn't ask about Anna. He just worked beside me like he'd always been here. By midnight, the house looked different. Not better, but touched. And yet, when I climbed the stairs alone, I saw it. Anna. She was sitting on the porch swing in the dark, arms crossed, her shadow cast long by the porch light I'd replaced an hour earlier. I opened the door but didn't step out. "What do you want?" I asked. She didn't move. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said. "That's what I stopped doing." She flinched, just slightly. Then she stood, walked away. I didn't watch her go, but I left the porch light on all night. Not for her. For the house. I woke up before sunrise. The house was breathing, wood creaking, pipes shifting, the soft hum of something becoming. That stayed with me all day. We started drafting a mission, not a gallery, not a studio, a haven, for those whose voices had been silenced, whose families erased them, whose pain had nowhere to land. I named it The Anchorage, a place to tether yourself before the storm swallowed you whole. We worked on a flyer, seeking artists, writers, dancers, storytellers. If you've been made to feel small, this is your space. We printed 20 copies and hung them around town. Coffee shops, libraries, bus stops. No logo, just an address and a question. What if your pain had a room? That afternoon, a woman knocked. Mid-40s, tattooed wrists. She didn't smile. "I saw your flyer," she said. "You really mean it?" I nodded. She stepped inside like someone stepping into a memory they'd tried to forget. "I was a singer," she said later. before my husband made me stop. I showed her the empty room upstairs. She ran her fingers along the windowsill and said, "This'll do." 2 more came by week's end. A teenage boy who sketched in secret. A man who whispered poetry like prayer. The house began to hum with new voices, laughter, music, hushed conversations at midnight. Isaac built shelves from salvaged wood. I turned the old master bedroom into a recording room, but outside the war pressed on. I received a cease and desist. A claim that I was endangering the neighborhood with unregulated activity, that my occupants lacked background checks, that the property was not zoned for communal use. It wasn't Anna's name on the letter. It was Gerald's. Again. This time I didn't flinch. I called a journalist I knew from college, someone who owed me a favor, sent her photos, told her everything, not the scandal, the story. The anchorage, I said, is what happens when the world tells you to disappear, and instead, you build something. The article went live 2 days later. Local headline, Art Against Erasure, one man turns divorce into a movement. The comments were brutal, half support, half venom, but people started showing up. One brought pastries, another donated canvases. A high school art teacher offered workshops. The space breathed, swelled. And just when I thought I'd found the new shape of my life, something shifted again. A man in a suit waited outside the gate. FBI credentials. A quiet voice. "I'm not here for you," he said, "but we should talk about Gerald Carrington." The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. I met the agent in the back room, the one that still smelled faintly of sawdust and turpentine. He sat like a man used to silence, not expecting to be believed. "We're investigating Carrington Holdings," he said. "Fraud, money laundering, shell charities. We believe some of the assets may be in your name." "My name?" I blinked. "What does that mean?" "Your house, the transfer. We think it may have been a way to temporarily hide assets, until the heat cooled down." My mouth went dry. "You're saying he gave it to me just to bury it?" "Possibly, but you holding on to it this long wasn't in his plan." I leaned back, laughed once, sharp. "So I'm not a threat because I stood up. I'm a threat because I didn't vanish." He nodded. "Exactly." That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the halls of my own home like it was a crime scene, touched door frames, ran my hand along the banister. Everything I'd built, we'd built, could be reclassified, repossessed, folded back into his rot. Isaac found me at dawn, sitting on the floor of the entryway. "You okay?" "They're not after me," I said, "but they might take everything anyway." He sat beside me, quiet. "We could fight," he said. "Or we could tell the truth," I murmured, louder than they expect. That became the plan. We organized an event, not an opening, not a fundraiser, a testimony. We called it Unwritten. A night where every artist in the anchorage would tell their story, through painting, dance, spoken word. Not about victory, about survival. Word spread fast. Some local press, university kids, a few strangers who just needed something that felt real. The night before, I repainted the living room wall, stark white, fresh, bare. Then I hung one painting. Mine, the dinner. Gerald's smug face, Anna's silence, the toast frozen midair. Around them, the rest of the canvas dissolved, into red, then gray, then raw brush strokes like storm waves. Underneath it, I wrote nothing. Let them feel it. The night of Unwritten, the house pulsed. Candles lined the stairs. Music poured from corners. People sat on pillows, stood in doorways, leaned against each other. No one asked who you were, just what brought you here. I watched a woman read a poem she'd never said aloud. A boy show a sketch of a monster with his father's eyes. Laughter, crying, applause that wasn't polite. It was necessary. And then I spoke. Not a performance, a declaration. I was erased politely, with papers, with dinner, with silence. I let it happen, until I didn't. I paused. Let the room hold the breath. This place is not revenge, it's memory, it's voice, and it's staying. People rose to their feet, and that was when I saw her, Anna, in the back, not clapping, just watching, not angry, not smug, just hollow. She slipped away before I could speak, but this time, it wasn't me she left behind. The summons arrived in a red envelope, hand-delivered. Court date, civil suit. Gerald was suing me for unlawful occupation of real property, citing undisclosed technicalities in the original deed transfer. It was designed to look legitimate, not personal, but I knew better. It was an attack, not on me, on what I'd built. I sat with the letter for a long time, then placed it on the floor, stepped back, and took a photo. Printed it in black and white, pinned it to the wall, right next to the headline from the article, Art Against Erasure. Then I picked up the phone. Isaac, I said, we need to do something bold. 3 days later, we launched a live stream. No filters, no stage lights, just a camera in the center of the anchorage, and a title, They Want Silence, We Choose Story. We streamed for 24 hours straight. Artists spoke, painted, sang, sculpted. Every hour someone else stepped in. Survivors of control, of institutions, of families like Anna's. They didn't rant, they remembered. And I saved my hour for last. At 6 a.m., while the house was quiet, I stood before the camera and told the story. Not of the lawsuit, but of the dinner. The humiliation. The silence. The moment I realized I wasn't invited. I was tolerated. I used to think dignity meant being accepted, I said. Now I know it means not needing the room that spits you out. And I showed them the deed, held it up to the lens. This paper doesn't make me free, but it reminds me I'm not disposable. The stream went viral. Thousands of views. Comments from strangers, survivors, people I'd never meet, but who saw themselves in me. And that changed the court date. What Gerald planned as a quiet erasure became public. Cameras outside the courthouse, journalists, students with sketchbooks, protesters with signs, let us exist, not your property, pain builds beauty. He arrived in a black car, flanked by lawyers, perfect suit, same cold eyes. I walked in alone. Inside, the judge was firm, neutral, but curious. My lawyer presented the deed, the signatures, the photographs of our work, the recognition the anchorage had begun to receive. Then Gerald's side tried to argue intent, that the gift of the house was never meant to be permanent. They called Anna to the stand. She walked past me like a ghost. Hair tied back. No makeup. A woman stripped of performance. When asked about the deed, she hesitated, glanced once in my direction. Then she said, "Yes." I signed it over. No, it wasn't coerced. Did you believe he'd keep it? Long pause. I hoped he wouldn't. And just like that, truth. Clean. Quiet. Brutal. When the ruling came, it was short. The court finds in favor of Mr. Rayner. The property is his. The suit is dismissed. There was no applause, just silence. A weight dropped. Outside, the crowd parted as I stepped into the light. Gerald stared at me like a statue cracking. Anna was already gone. That night, we held a gathering. Not a celebration, a moment. The painting I made of that courtroom, just outlines, hands, faces blurring in motion, hung in the main room. People came. Saturday spoke, stayed. And then, near midnight, the doorbell rang. A girl. Early 20s, shivering, eyes rimmed red. "I heard about this place," she said. "I don't have anywhere." I stepped aside, opened the door wider. You do now. The house was quiet, paint still drying on the gallery wall, a sketchbook forgotten on the porch swing. Wind moved through the open windows like a breath. I stood alone in the main room, the canvas of the dinner behind me, now framed, lit, permanent. Outside, the world went on, fast, indifferent. Inside, something held. I turned off the lights one by one, locked the door, sat by the window as morning crept in. Just the sound of someone climbing the porch steps,